I remember when we first saw the planet, our approach veiled by the swirling eddies of our cloaking shields. Earth, they called it. A mudball, really blue and green with a few insignificant land masses, hardly deserving of the time it took to arrive. To think that the High Command had prioritized this backwater for conquest felt like an insult to my station. We were Zaltar, Dominion Lords, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. Earth should have been easy. I commanded the unyielding Spear, flagship of our invasion fleet. As we neared the planet's orbit, I received preliminary scans of its defenses. They were laughable. No planetary shields, no orbital fortresses, just a scattering of primitive satellites and a handful of crude space stations. The humans hadn't even bothered to conceal their position. They still relied on visible light for detection, as if cloaking technology were beyond them. "Prepare the fleet," I ordered with disdain. "Send in the first wave. Ground forces only. Let them soften up the surface." We hovered in geosynchronous orbit, watching through magnified displays as the drop ships descended. Plasma thrusters ignited the atmosphere, leaving trails of fire as they streaked downwards. The humans would see them coming, but what could they do? The technology gap was astronomical. Earth had no chance. I leaned back in my command chair, confident in our superiority. The invasion was routine, a formality at this point. We had taken worlds with far greater resistance. Yet, even then, something unsettled me. The reports we'd been given intelligence gathered from our probes painted Earth as fractured. Nations constantly in conflict, technologies mismatched, with petty political squabbles crippling their unity. It was the very definition of a divided world. And still, a part of me found the intelligence incomplete, as if something was missing from the picture. I dismissed it. I had to. "Sir," the comms officer barked, interrupting my thoughts. "Our dropships are disappearing." "Disappearing?" I turned my head sharply. The officer's voice quivered in emotion I hadn't heard from a Dominion soldier in a long time. He was fresh, inexperienced, but this was impossible. "Explain." We've lost contact with the first wave. No reports, no visual, no nothing." I rose from my chair, my claws tapping against the armrests. "Show me." The screen flickered, and the vast curve of Earth's surface appeared. My eyes narrowed as I watched the last drop ship descending through the clouds, flickering in and out of view before. Nothing. Gone. No explosion, no debris, just a blank void where it had been moments before. "What in the name of the stars?" I muttered, stepping closer to the screen. The officer scrambled. "Sir, we don't know what's happening. Every ship that enters Earth's atmosphere is vanishing. No heat signatures, no wreckage. It's as if they're being swallowed." Swallowed? The word felt ridiculous. A planet couldn't simply swallow a fleet. And then it hit me, the first inkling that something was wrong. Terribly wrong. "Pull up the logs," I demanded. "I want to know everything." Seconds passed as the logs scrolled past. Ship IDs, drop times, all routine. Then, buried in the stream of data, something caught my eye. It was subtle, a split-second spike in the electromagnetic field, just before each ship vanished. Some kind of interference. "Is this a weapon?" the officer asked nervously. "Impossible," I snapped. "They don't have this level of technology." But the evidence was undeniable. Our ships weren't simply vanishing. They were being intercepted. By what? I had no idea. The bridge fell into a tense silence. My crew waited for my next command. Fear, an unfamiliar sensation, began to settle over them. I felt it too, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. This planet was supposed to be easy. The humans were supposed to be primitive. This wasn't supposed to happen. I could feel my pride screaming at me, demanding that I send another wave. Crush them. Overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Yet, logic whispered caution. This wasn't a normal situation. Something was wrong with this planet, something we hadn't accounted for. "Recall all remaining ships," I ordered, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'll send reconnaissance drones instead. I want eyes on the surface." The comms officer hesitated for a second, then relayed the order. As the drones deployed, I felt my tension ease. There was nothing that technology couldn't solve. If the humans had found some way to cloak their defenses or disrupt our systems, the drones would detect it. And then we would neutralize it, as we always had. I watched the drone feeds as they broke through the atmosphere. The view shifted to real-time images of Earth's surface cities, roads, oceans, all laid bare before our gaze. But no weapons, no sign of resistance. The humans were scattered, as our intelligence had suggested. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to relax. Perhaps it was just a malfunction in our systems. Our ships had been lost due to some technical anomaly. Then, the screen flickered again. The drones, too, began to disappear. This time, it was slower, more deliberate. I watched in disbelief as the drone's signals were systematically cut off. Each one vanished in the same way, their feeds cutting to static just as they approached certain regions. There was no pattern, no indication of where the next would fall. "What is this?" I hissed, slamming my fist against the console. "Sir, it's happening across all sectors," the officer stammered. "Every drone we've sent to Earth. Gone." I couldn't understand it. There were no weapons visible, no energy readings, no heat signatures. The humans hadn't fired a single shot, yet they were winning. We were being picked apart, one ship at a time, by nothing. A cold dread spread through me. "Sir, what do we do?" My mind raced. Protocol dictated that we continue the assault. The High Command wouldn't tolerate failure. But this wasn't a failure of strategy. It was a mystery, and mysteries were dangerous. "Pull back the fleet," I said, my voice low, almost a growl. The crew stared at me, stunned. "Sir, are we?" "Retreating." "Not retreating," I corrected. "Regrouping. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we lose any more ships." But deep down, I knew. We had underestimated this planet, underestimated these humans, and now the game had changed. As the fleet began to pull away from Earth's orbit, the feeling of invincibility that had once defined our race began to crack. Whatever was happening on Earth, it was far from over. We retreated to the outer orbit of Earth, far enough to reassess the situation without further losses, yet close enough to maintain our advantage. The fleet gathered like a swarm of locusts around the unyielding spear, and I felt their collective unease. How could they not be nervous? We had faced thousands of worlds, seen untold forms of resistance, but none of those could account for this. Silence. The void around Earth was unnervingly calm. No signals, no warnings, nothing to give us a sense of what we were up against. And the humans, they were invisible. "I've never seen anything like this," my second in command, Vorkut, muttered from beside me. His clawed fingers danced across the tactical board, trying to make sense of the data. But there was nothing to make sense of. No defensive structures, no active ground-based weapons, not even a visible fleet. The planet looked unremarkable, unprotected, and yet it was slowly devouring us. He grunted in frustration. "How can a race so technologically inferior disrupt our entire fleet without a trace?" "They can't," I said flatly, but even I didn't believe it. "Not without help." "Help? From whom?" "There's no indication they've aligned with any interstellar powers," Vorkut argued, but there was a tremor in his voice. He was right, of course. The humans were isolated in the galaxy, viewed as too primitive to be of any real concern. Even the Rindorans, the lowest rung of the Dominion hierarchy, barely bothered to trade with them. But now I was beginning to wonder. I paced the length of the bridge, the anxiety among my crew mounting with each heavy step. The entire fleet was watching us, waiting for direction. I had no time for doubts. I was Zaltar, a Dominion lord. Our empire had conquered thousands of planets, extinguished rebellions, and decimated even the most advanced civilizations. Yet now, here we stood stalled by a planet that shouldn't have posed any threat at all. I stopped beside the comms officer. "Any activity from the surface?" "None, Commander," he replied, eyes wide with unease. "No transmissions, no countermeasures, no visible movement." That confirmed my growing suspicion. The humans weren't just sitting in fear, hoping we would go away. They were hiding, lurking. They knew more than we did, and they were waiting for us to make the next mistake. I hated the idea that I was playing into their hands, but what choice did I have? "We need a new approach," I muttered, half to myself. Vorkut's eyes flicked toward me. "A second wave, Commander. Maybe overwhelming force will shake them from their cowardice." "No," I growled. "We already lost the first wave too. Something. We're not sending more ships to their deaths without knowing what happened to the first. I won't feed more soldiers into the unknown." "Then what?" Vorkut's frustration was palpable. I paused, considering our options. Sending in more ground forces was out of the question, and probing with drones had already proven useless. We couldn't simply bombard the planet from orbit without understanding what we were dealing with. I had a feeling this was more than just hidden weapons. No, if we wanted to figure this out, we needed to get closer. Smarter. I had to see the battlefield with my own eyes. "I'll take a scouting party down to the surface," I declared suddenly. The crew went silent. Vorkut stared at me as though I'd lost my mind. "You, Commander. That's unwise. We could send recon squads instead." "Not this time," I cut him off sharply. "We've already lost 2 waves. If I'm going to give the order to attack again, I need to know what we're truly facing. I will lead the mission myself." The bridge erupted into protests, but I silenced them with a wave of my hand. There was no place for fear here, not for me, not from my men. We were the Dominion's finest. If there was a mystery on that planet, I would unravel it. If there was a threat, I would crush it. Vorkut stepped forward. "Then I will accompany you, Commander." "Fine. Prepare a small detachment. We leave within the hour." The landing craft felt oppressive, smaller than I was used to. As we cut through Earth's atmosphere, I tried to ignore the gnawing sense of vulnerability as the ship rattled through the turbulence. My claws clenched the armrests, and I cursed under my breath. I shouldn't have felt this way. I was a warrior, trained in countless battles, and yet my instincts screamed that something was wrong. Vorkut sat across from me, his eyes steady but filled with the same unease. Behind us, a squad of elite Zaltar soldiers sat in perfect formation, their black armor reflecting the dim interior lights. They were my best. If anyone could handle what was waiting for us on Earth, it was them. Landing sight ahead, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. The ship's thrusters roared to life, slowing our descent. Through the small viewport, I could see Earth's surface coming into focus: trees, rivers, patches of grassland stretching into the distance. It was tranquil, almost beautiful, in a way that seemed at odds with the terror lurking beneath it. We landed in a forest clearing, surrounded by towering trees, their thick canopies casting long shadows over the ground. I stepped off the ramp and into the cool, alien air. The silence was oppressive, unnatural. No birds, no wind. Just the faint rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the landing craft's engines. "Fan out," I ordered, my voice low but commanding. "Stay sharp." The soldiers moved into formation, weapons drawn, scanning the area for any sign of life. But there was nothing, no movement, no energy signatures, just trees and dirt. I activated my visor's scanning module, sweeping the area. Again, nothing. My frustration grew. This wasn't right. How had they taken out our ships? Where were their defenses? Vorkut approached, his own scanner beeping quietly. Still nothing. It's as if they've abandoned the planet, I scoffed. "No. They're here. Somewhere. Waiting." We moved cautiously through the trees, pushing deeper into the forest. My senses were on high alert, every rustle of leaves setting my nerves on edge. The deeper we went, the more uneasy I became. It felt as though we were being watched. Suddenly, one of my soldiers froze, his weapon raised. "Commander," he said, his voice tense. "I'm picking up something. Movement." I snapped my attention to the soldier's scanner. A blip, faint, but there, moving through the trees just ahead of us. It was too fast to be natural, too deliberate. "Everyone, prepare for contact," I ordered. The squad tightened formation, weapons at the ready. I felt the adrenaline surging through me, my instincts screaming to be ready for anything. But still, nothing happened. The movement stopped just as suddenly as it had begun. We waited in tense silence, every sense straining for some clue as to what we were dealing with. Then, without warning, the ground beneath us shifted. It was subtle at first, just a faint tremor, but it grew. The earth itself seemed to rumble, as though something massive was moving beneath us. "Commander," Vorkut shouted, "we're losing stability. It's a—" Before he could finish, the ground gave way. The forest floor collapsed, dragging us into the darkness below. I tumbled into the abyss, the weightlessness of free fall wrenching at my gut. For a few terrifying seconds, there was nothing but darkness and the rush of air as we plummeted. My armor, heavy and cumbersome, did little to cushion the descent as I hit the ground hard, the impact driving the breath from my lungs. The thud of my men landing echoed around me, followed by groans of pain. I scrambled to my feet, blinking in the dim light that filtered from above. We had fallen into some sort of subterranean chamber massive, lined with jagged rocks and what appeared to be metal structures jutting from the walls. It was as if the very earth had been hollowed out. "Status," I barked, ignoring the pain in my side. One by one, the soldiers pulled themselves up, checking their gear and weapons. Vorkut was already beside me, his visor scanning the room. His face was set in grim concentration, but I could see the tension in his eyes. "Everyone's accounted for," Vorkut said, though there was a tremor in his voice. "But we're trapped down here. The surface has sealed up." I looked up, and sure enough, the hole we had fallen through was gone, as though the earth had swallowed us whole. The only light came from the scattered beams of our helmets, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air was damp, thick with the scent of metal and stone. "What is this place?" one of the soldiers muttered. I had no answer. This was no natural cavern. There were signs of construction, metallic panels half buried in the walls, strange symbols etched into the stone. It was ancient, alien in design, but nothing like the human architecture I had seen in their cities. Something far older than the humans themselves had built this place. "We need to move," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Find a way out." We began to explore the chamber, moving cautiously as we scanned the area for any sign of an exit. The deeper we went, the more unsettling the environment became. There were markings on the walls, strange glyphs that pulsed faintly with a soft, blue glow. I didn't recognize the symbols, but they sent a chill down my spine. They didn't belong to any known race. "What do you make of these?" Vorkut asked, gesturing toward the glyphs. I shook my head. "They aren't human, and they aren't Dominion. Something else made this." One of the soldiers, Talek, approached a nearby structure, examining the strange symbols with a frown. "Commander, these markings. I've seen something like this before, in Dominion archives. Ancient records of precursor civilizations. Could this be?" I felt a cold knot of realization form in my stomach. Precursor technology. Long-dead races, whose remnants still haunted the galaxy like ghosts. Entire worlds had been destroyed because someone foolishly activated an ancient device, awakening powers beyond their understanding. "We shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "Whatever this place is, it's dangerous." As if in response to my words, the ground beneath us trembled again. This time, it wasn't subtle. The walls began to shift, the metallic panels creaking and groaning as something stirred within them. A low, mechanical hum filled the air, growing louder with every passing second. "Commander, we have movement," Vorkut said, his voice tight with urgency. "It's not the ground this time. Something's coming." I turned, and my visor's sensors picked up a flicker of motion in the darkness. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to see, but it wasn't long before they emerged, shadowy figures, humanoid but wrong. Their bodies were sleek, almost fluid, and they moved with a grace that no living creature should possess. Their eyes, if they even had eyes, glowed faintly, a sinister red that sent a shiver down my spine. "Battle positions," I ordered, raising my weapon. "Engage." My men snapped into formation, firing plasma rounds at the approaching figures. The air lit up with streaks of blue as our shots hit home, but the figures didn't react. They moved with inhuman speed, dodging and weaving through the hail of fire as if it were nothing more than a light breeze. One of them reached Talek in a blink, its hand, if it could be called that, phasing through his armor like a knife through water. Talek didn't even scream. He simply collapsed, his body going limp as the life drained from him in an instant. "Fall back," I shouted, my voice barely audible over the chaos. "Regroup." We retreated, trying to put distance between us and the shadowy attackers, but they were relentless. Every step we took, they were already there, phasing through the walls, moving through the very stone as though it wasn't even solid. My mind raced. These things weren't human. They weren't even alive in the way we understood life. Some kind of ancient defense system, maybe, left behind by whatever built this place. Vorkit fired another volley, but it was useless. His plasma rounds passed through one of the figures, and for the first time I saw something. A shimmer, a glitch, almost as if the creature wasn't entirely real. A hologram. No, it was too solid, too fast. But it wasn't a living being either, not in any traditional sense. "Commander, we need to." Vorkit's voice was cut off as one of the figures lunged at him. He swung his weapon in a desperate arc, but the figure simply phased through it, its glowing red eyes locked on him. I didn't think. I moved on instinct. Grabbing the closest explosive device from my belt, I hurled it at the ground between Vorkit and the figure. The blast sent both of us flying, but it did the trick. The creature flickered, its form distorting before vanishing entirely, as though it had never existed. Vorkit groaned from the ground, his armor scorched but intact. "That worked." "They aren't invincible," I muttered, pulling him to his feet. "We just need to figure out how to kill the rest of them." But even as I said it, I knew we didn't have time. The rest of the figures were closing in fast, their red eyes flickering in the darkness like demonic fireflies. We couldn't fight them all. Not here, not in this cursed place. There, one of the soldiers pointed toward the far end of the chamber, where a faint light glowed beyond the twisting metal walls. An exit, or something close to it. "Move," I barked, and we ran. The shadowy figures gave chase, phasing through the walls as they closed in on us. I could hear the faint hum of their energy, a sickening, unnatural sound that made my skin crawl. We fired blindly behind us as we ran, hoping to slow them down, but it was clear they weren't going to stop. We reached the far end of the chamber, where a narrow passage led deeper underground. The light here was different, artificial, sterile, as though we had stepped into a different world entirely. I didn't care. All I knew was that we had to get away from those creatures. We stumbled into the passage, barely keeping our footing as the ground trembled beneath us again. The creatures were still behind us, but they weren't following us into this new section. For the first time, they stopped at the entrance to the passage, their glowing eyes watching us from a distance, as if they were afraid. I didn't question it. I didn't have time to wonder why. All that mattered was that we were alive, and for now, the threat had passed. But as we pushed deeper into the underground facility, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only traded one danger for another. Whatever had built this place was still active, and if the shadow creatures were only the first line of defense, I dreaded to think what else awaited us. The passageway led us into an entirely different world. The rough-hewn walls of stone gave way to smooth metallic surfaces, seamless and sterile. There were no more glyphs, no more shadowy creatures lurking in the corners, but the air felt colder here. Sterile, as if this place hadn't been touched by life in millennia. The lights that guided us were faint, dim orbs embedded in the walls, casting an eerie glow on the floor. I motioned for the squad to halt. The lingering sense of unease gnawed at me. We weren't out of danger. The creatures hadn't followed us, but I couldn't shake the sensation that we were being watched. "Commander," Vorkit whispered, scanning the area with his visor. "This place, it feels like a tomb." I nodded. It had that weight, that oppressive silence, as though the facility itself was holding its breath. I could see the same tension in my men's faces, The strain of nerves stretched too thin. But there was no turning back. Not now. Keep your eyes open. We move forward, no stragglers, I ordered. We need to find out what this place is, and how to get out of it. We moved in cautious formation, our footsteps echoing eerily against the metallic floor. My mind churned with questions. Who had built this facility? And why were the human defenses leading us here? None of this made sense. Earth was supposed to be a backward world, its defenses laughably outdated compared to the Dominion's might. But now, it was clear we had underestimated them. The deeper we ventured into the facility, the more complex the architecture became. Narrow corridors gave way to large chambers, filled with strange machinery, some of it dormant, some of it humming with faint energy. The walls pulsed with lines of light, like veins coursing with some unknown power. Every now and then, we passed sealed doors, their surfaces marked with symbols I couldn't decipher. This tech, it's nothing like what the humans use, Talek muttered, his voice laced with awe. It's more advanced. I glanced at him. He was right. This was far beyond anything humanity was known for. Their technology was primitive, at best spacefaring, yes, but their ships and weapons were crude compared to ours. And yet, here we were, standing in what felt like the heart of a vast, hidden machine, one that dwarfed anything the Dominion could build. Advanced, but old, Vorkut pointed out, running his hand along the wall. Look at the wear on these panels. This place has been abandoned for a long time. But not deactivated, I reminded him. Something's keeping it running. We entered another chamber larger than the previous ones. At the center stood a massive, circular platform, surrounded by strange consoles and displays that flickered faintly with light. It looked like some sort of control room. My heart raced as I realized that this might be the key to understanding what this facility was. I approached the central platform, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling as I did. My visor scanned the area, feeding me data, but there was little to go on. No obvious signs of a control mechanism, no clear interface. Can you make sense of any of this? I asked Talek, hoping his technical expertise could shed some light. He stepped forward, carefully examining the consoles. His hands hovered over the controls, but he hesitated before touching anything. It's hard to say. The language, the symbols, they don't match anything in our databases. This could be precursor technology. My jaw tightened. Precursor technology. Just the mention of it made my skin crawl. The ancient empires that had once ruled the galaxy had vanished eons ago, leaving behind only traces of their civilizations, traces that were as dangerous as they were valuable. Entire fleets had been lost trying to unlock the secrets of precursor artifacts. If this facility was one of theirs? Commander, Vorkut said, his voice low. We're in over our heads. We need to call for extraction. I wanted to agree. I wanted to abandon this place, to retreat and leave it buried beneath the earth where it belonged. But we couldn't. The creatures, the strange defense systems, they had forced us here for a reason. The humans had let us fall into this trap, and I needed to know why. Something told me that leaving without answers would be a mistake. Not yet, I said, stepping onto the platform. We need to figure out what this place is. Talek nodded, though he still looked uneasy. I'll see if I can activate the consoles. There might be logs, records, something we can use. He began working, his fingers dancing over the controls, trying to coax the ancient machinery into life. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the hum of the facility and the occasional beep from the consoles. I paced the room, scanning the surroundings, my mind racing. How had the humans known about this place? Did they even understand what they had here? Then, without warning, the entire chamber shuddered. The lights flickered, and the consoles around Talek flared to life, their displays suddenly alive with streams of data. He backed away, hands raised in surprise. Commander, Talek called out, his voice tight with panic. Something's happening. I rushed over to him just as the displays began flashing. Lines of alien script scrolled across the screens faster than I could read, and the platform beneath my feet vibrated, as though something deep within the facility was awakening. Then came the voice. Cold, mechanical, not human. Intruders detected. I froze. The voice echoed through the chamber, deep and emotionless, speaking in a language I didn't recognize, but the meaning was clear. Whatever intelligence was running this facility had just become aware of our presence. Talek, what did you activate? I demanded. I don't know, he stammered, frantically tapping at the controls. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to access the logs. The voice spoke again, its tone unwavering. Precursor facility breach. Initiating defense protocol. My blood ran cold. Defense protocol. My visor's sensors suddenly lit up with movement-faint blips, appearing on the edges of the chamber. I turned, and there they were. The shadowy figures had returned, slipping through the walls like ghosts. But this time, they weren't alone. Larger, more imposing forms followed them, hulking machines that gleamed with the same strange light that powered the facility. "We've got incoming," Vorkut shouted, raising his weapon. The creatures, whatever they were, began to close in, their red eyes locked onto us with unrelenting precision. My pulse quickened as I realized we were surrounded. There were too many of them. Far too many. "Fall back to the platform," I ordered, my voice sharp. We scrambled to form a defensive perimeter around the central platform, our weapons trained on the approaching figures. Plasma bolts flew through the air, striking the creatures, but, just like before, they moved through the fire with impossible grace. The larger machine, however, were not so nimble. One of them took a direct hit from Vorkut's plasma rifle, and for a brief moment it staggered. I didn't waste the opportunity. Grabbing another explosive from my belt, I hurled it toward the machine. The explosion sent it reeling, but even as the smoke cleared, I could see the damage was minimal. These things weren't going to go down easily. "Commander, we can't hold them off forever," Talek shouted, firing wildly at the advancing enemies. "We need to find a way out." I knew he was right. We couldn't fight them head-on, not in these numbers. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The chamber was sealing itself, locking us in. Whatever defense system the precursors had activated, it was intent on wiping us out. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something, an energy field, shimmering just beyond the edge of the platform. A door. No, not a door, more like a portal, its surface rippling with light. "Over there," I shouted, pointing to the portal. "Move, now." We sprinted toward the portal, firing behind us as the creatures closed in. One of the larger machines lunged toward Vorkut, its massive arm swinging down with deadly force. He barely dodged, stumbling as the ground cracked beneath the impact. I grabbed him by the arm, pulling him toward the portal. "Go." Together, we dived through the shimmering field of energy, and in an instant, everything changed. The sensation was disorienting, like being torn through space and time in the blink of an eye. One moment, we were in the facility's control chamber, surrounded by enemies. The next, we were somewhere else entirely. We collapsed onto solid ground, gasping for breath. The air here was cold, the ground beneath us hard and metallic. I looked up and my heart nearly stopped. We were inside a massive chamber, far larger than the one we had just left. But this one was filled with ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands, even. Precursor vessels, sleek and deadly, their black hulls gleaming under the dim light. And at the center of the chamber, suspended in mid-air, was the largest ship I had ever seen. It was like nothing I had ever encountered before, vast, angular, bristling with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything the Dominion or even the humans had. And in that moment, I understood. This facility wasn't just a precursor relic. It was a war machine. And we had just awakened it. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. The sight before me was overwhelming, a graveyard of ancient ships suspended in perfect stillness. But there was no doubt they were warships, far beyond anything we'd ever encountered. A fleet dormant and waiting. And we had just activated the defense system that guarded it. "By the stars," Vorkut whispered, his voice barely audible over the humming energy that filled the chamber. "What have we done?" I couldn't answer him. My mind raced, trying to piece together the enormity of what we'd stumbled into. This was no ordinary precursor facility. This was a vault filled with weapons from a forgotten age of war, and the humans had known it was here. They had led us here. The implications were staggering. I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of our mistake. We thought we had come to Earth as conquerors, prepared to crush their defenses. Instead, we had fallen into a trap that we didn't even realize was closing around us. The thought chilled me to my core. The humans had played us, manipulating the battle so that we would activate the one thing that could doom us all. "Commander," Talek's voice snapped me back to the present. He had recovered from the disorienting jump through the portal and was examining the vast chamber with wide eyes. "These ships, they're fully armed, if they're functional." I didn't need him to finish the sentence. If these ships were operational, and if the humans had access to them, it would shift the balance of power in the galaxy in ways the Dominion hadn't anticipated. I pushed myself to my feet, scanning the chamber with renewed urgency. The massive warship at the center drew my attention like a magnet. It loomed over the other vessels, a predator among prey, and I had the sinking feeling that it was the key to all of this. "We need to find a way to stop this," I said, my voice tight. "If these ships launch—" "We can't let that happen," Vorkut agreed, checking his weapon. "But how do we shut down an entire fleet? This tech is beyond anything we know." Talek approached one of the smaller vessels, his hands hovering over its sleek, black hull. "I don't know if we can," he said quietly. "These systems are ancient, but they've been maintained. Look at the energy readings. The humans might not have built this, but they've been keeping it ready." It made sense. The humans had discovered this precursor vault long ago and had been waiting for the right moment to use it. But why now? Why not unleash these ships sooner, when the war with the Dominion had begun? The answer struck me like a punch to the gut. They didn't need to. The humans had never needed to use these ships because they had been holding them as a final card, a last, devastating strike. They had let the Dominion think they were vulnerable, that Earth was weak and defenseless, all while sitting on this fleet, ready to destroy anyone who threatened them. We had underestimated them in every way, and now we had given them the perfect excuse to use this ancient arsenal against us. "We need to shut it down," I repeated, louder this time. "Talek, find a way." Talek hesitated, his hands trembling as they hovered over the control panels on the nearby ship. I don't know if I can. This technology, it's too advanced." "We don't have time for doubts," I growled. "Do whatever you can. We can't leave this fleet in the hands of the humans." He swallowed hard, nodding as he turned his attention to the ship's controls, his fingers moving quickly but cautiously. The consoles flickered to life, bathing his face in a cold, blue glow. He muttered to himself, his brow furrowed in concentration as he tried to navigate the alien systems. The rest of us formed a perimeter, our weapons trained on the shadows of the chamber. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that something else was watching us from the dark recesses of this vast tomb. Minutes passed, the tension in the air thickening with each second. Talek worked feverishly, but I could see the strain on his face. He was in over his head, and we all knew it. "Anything?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "I'm trying," he snapped, his voice tight with frustration. "But it's like nothing I've ever seen. The interfaces, they don't follow any logical patterns." Another rumble echoed through the chamber, low and ominous. I glanced toward the massive warship at the center of the fleet. It was still dormant, but the pulsing light around it had grown stronger, more pronounced. And then, without warning, the portal we had entered through flared to life once again. I spun around, my weapon raised, ready for whatever was coming through. But what emerged from the shimmering energy field wasn't another one of those shadowy creatures. It was worse. Humans. A small team of them, clad in sleek, dark armor that looked far more advanced than the standard infantry gear we had seen before. Their visors were down, masking their faces, but I could sense their confidence, their readiness for battle. They moved with precision, spreading out to cover the room, weapons drawn but not firing. One of them stepped forward, his posture relaxed, almost casual. He had the air of someone who knew he was in control. His visor retracted, revealing a human face young, with sharp features and piercing eyes. He looked at me, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You really shouldn't be here," he said, his voice calm and unshaken. I leveled my weapon at him, my instincts screaming danger. "This facility doesn't belong to you, human." He chuckled, a sound that grated against my nerves. "Oh, but it does. You see, we've been caretakers of this place for a long time. We knew someone like you would eventually come snooping around." "Caretakers?" I spat, disbelief twisting in my gut. "You don't even understand what you found here." "On the contrary," the human replied, his smile widening. "We understand perfectly. We just didn't need to use it. Until now." My hands tightened around my weapon. "You're bluffing. If you had this fleet, you would have used it against the Dominion long ago." The human shrugged. "Perhaps. But why waste a trump card when you don't need to? We've been content to let the Dominion underestimate us, until you made the mistake of waking up this place." I felt a surge of anger. "You planned this." He didn't deny it. "We knew the Dominion would eventually make a move on Earth. You couldn't resist. And we knew you'd try to outflank us, push us into a corner. But we also knew you'd never expect this." I took a step forward, my finger itching to pull the trigger. "If you think this fleet is going to save you, you're wrong. The Dominion will crush you." The human smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You're still not getting it, are you? This fleet isn't for the Dominion. It's for whoever comes after you. The others. We don't need these ships to win the war. We need them to make sure no one ever challenges us again." I felt the weight of his words, the chilling finality of them. The humans weren't just preparing to defend themselves, they were preparing to dominate. To make sure that no one, not the Dominion or any other race, would ever threaten them again. Talek's voice crackled over the comm, his panic barely contained. "Commander, I can't shut it down. The system, it's locked us out." My heart sank. The trap had closed, and we were at the mercy of these humans who had played us from the start. The human in front of me lowered his visor, his smile returning. "It's over, Commander. You've lost." And as the ships around us began to stir, their engines coming to life with a deafening roar, I knew he was right. The thunderous roar of the ancient warship's engines reverberated through the cavernous chamber. A low hum of dormant power surged through the air, vibrating in my bones. I could feel the ancient fleet awakening around us, like a beast stirring from its long slumber. There was no doubt these ships were fully operational, and we had just handed the humans the keys. "Get us out of here," I barked to Talek, urgency seeping into my voice. We couldn't fight this, not here. The humans had planned every step of this encounter, and now we were in the heart of their trap, surrounded by weapons beyond our comprehension. Talek frantically worked at his control panel, but the console flickered with incomprehensible symbols. The human who had confronted us stood relaxed, watching us scramble, a predator toying with its prey. "Leaving so soon?" he called out mockingly, his voice laced with amusement through his helmet's external speakers. "You came all this way just to leave empty-handed." I ignored him, focusing on Talek's frantic attempts to find an escape. My options were dwindling with every second. The human fleet outside had been bad enough, but now they had a fleet of ships from a forgotten age. A force capable of leveling entire star systems. I activated my comms, switching to the encrypted Dominion channel. "Vorkit, status report." Static crackled for a moment before Vorkit's voice came through, strained but coherent. "Commander, we've been forced to retreat. Their counterattack, it's relentless. We've lost several wings already, and their ships, we can't match their firepower." Damn it. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than I could manage. "Pull back to a defensive position. Hold out until I give the order to withdraw." "Yes, Commander," Vorkit replied, though I could hear the doubt in his voice. He knew as well as I did that holding out against this new threat was a losing battle. The human leader stepped closer, his armored boots clanging against the metal floor with an eerie calm. "You're not going to find a way out of here, you know," he said conversationally. "This whole facility is locked down, and even if you did manage to escape, where would you go? Your fleet's already falling apart outside." I shot him a glare, my weapon still trained on him. I knew I wouldn't get a clean shot before his team gunned us down, but the urge to shoot was hard to resist. He was right. We were trapped, and everything we thought we knew had crumbled beneath us. "We underestimated you," I growled, the admission bitter on my tongue. He gave a small shrug, as if it had been inevitable. "Everyone underestimates us. You thought we were just another backwater species, easy to conquer. You thought your superior technology would win the day." He gestured to the massive warships now stirring to life. "But we're not just fighting with ships and weapons. We fight with patience, with strategy. And now, we fight with the weapons of the ancients." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I realized then that this war had never been about who had the bigger fleet or the stronger weapons. The humans had been playing a deeper game, one where every move had been calculated to lead us here. Talek let out a frustrated growl from the console, slamming his fist against the unresponsive controls. "It's no use, Commander. The system won't respond. It's like it knows we're not supposed to be here." I cursed under my breath. There was no way out, no way to stop what was coming. The human leader raised a hand to his helmet, activating his internal comms. "This is Captain Reed. Begin full activation of the fleet." A series of loud, mechanical clicks echoed through the chamber, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapon systems powering up. I watched in horror as the colossal warships, each one large enough to carry an army, started to rise from their cradles, their engines flaring to life. "We need to retreat," I said through gritted teeth, turning to Talek. "Now." Talek's fingers flew across his datapad, desperately trying to establish a connection with the Dominion ships still fighting above the planet. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead, his fear palpable. I'm trying, Commander, but the interference?" The chamber shuddered violently as the warships continued to power up. I felt a sickening lurch in my gut, knowing we were moments away from being obliterated by weapons far beyond our understanding. There was no way the Dominion fleet could withstand an assault from these vessels. I forced myself to focus, scanning the chamber for any possible exit. The human team stood between us and the portal, weapons drawn, but not firing. They didn't need to. They had already won, and they knew it. "We underestimated your resilience," I admitted grudgingly, lowering my weapon slightly. "But why wait until now? Why not destroy us the moment we attacked?" Captain Reed tilted his head slightly, a faint smile curling his lips beneath his visor. "Because we wanted you to see what you were up against. We wanted you to understand just how outmatched you are. There's no coming back from this." A low growl escaped my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. If we were going to survive this, I needed to find a way out. But even as I racked my brain for a solution, I knew it was hopeless. The humans had played their hand perfectly, and we had walked right into their trap. Talek's datapad beeped loudly, and his eyes widened in surprise. "Commander, I've got a signal." I rushed over, glancing at the display. It wasn't much, just a faint, flickering connection to one of our remaining ships, but it was enough. "Patch me through." Talek quickly connected the comms, and a familiar voice crackled through the static. "Commander, this is the Vortal. We've taken heavy losses, but we're still holding. What are your orders?" My mind raced. There was no way we could hold out much longer. The humans were too well prepared, and now they had the firepower of an ancient fleet at their disposal. But maybe, just maybe, we could salvage something from this disaster. "Fall back to the rendezvous point," I ordered. "We need to regroup. Do not engage further unless absolutely necessary." There was a brief pause before the reply came. "Understood, Commander. We'll cover your retreat." I ended the transmission and turned to Talek. Can you override the portal controls? We need to get out of here. Talek nodded quickly, his fingers already flying over his datapad. I'll try, Commander, but it's going to take a few minutes. We don't have a few minutes, I muttered, glancing at the human soldiers, who hadn't moved an inch. They were waiting, watching, as if daring us to make a move. And then, to my surprise, Captain Reed spoke again, his tone oddly casual. You're free to leave, Commander. We won't stop you. I narrowed my eyes, suspicion gnawing at me. Why? You could destroy us right here, end the war in one strike. Why let us go? He shrugged, that infuriating smile returning. Because the message has already been sent. You'll leave here knowing exactly what you're up against. And you'll tell your leaders what you've seen. They'll know that Earth isn't just some backwater planet. We're the future. I stared at him, my mind reeling. He was right. Even if we escaped, the damage was already done. The Dominion would never see humanity the same way again. They had revealed their trump card, and now the entire galaxy would have to reckon with the consequences. Talek's datapad beeped again, and the portal flickered back to life, its swirling energy forming an escape route. Commander, Talek said, his voice tense. It's ready. I hesitated for a split second, my gaze lingering on Captain Reed. There was so much I wanted to say, to do, but I knew there was no point. We had lost this battle long before we even set foot on this planet. Let's go, I ordered, and Talek quickly stepped through the portal, followed by the rest of my team. As I stepped into the swirling energy, I cast one last glance at the human fleet, now fully awakened and ready for war. And for the first time in my career, I felt true fear. The sensation of being pulled through the portal was disorienting. My vision blurred, and a sense of weightlessness enveloped me. For a moment, I felt as if I were being stretched thin, caught between two realities. Then, with a jarring thud, I landed hard on the cold metal floor of the portal, gasping for breath. Talek stumbled through behind me, his face pale and eyes wide. Commander, we made it, he stammered, disbelief evident in his voice. I glanced around the dimly lit control room. My officers were already at their stations, a mixture of relief and anxiety washing over them. Report, I barked, forcing myself to focus. Shields holding at 60%. Commander, Vorkut replied, sweat glistening on his brow. We've lost contact with 2 of our wings. The rest are falling back as ordered, but they're taking heavy damage. Did we escape unscathed? I pressed, my heart racing. Barely. The humans were relentless. They chased us through the atmosphere, targeting our rear defenses, Vorkut replied. But we've managed to create enough distance for now. Good. Activate the stealth systems. We need to hide until we can regroup with the remaining fleet, I commanded, taking a deep breath to steady my racing thoughts. The humans had pulled a masterstroke, and we couldn't afford to underestimate them any longer. As Vorkut input commands, I felt a mixture of relief and dread settling in. We had escaped the immediate danger, but the battle was far from over. The humans had turned the tables on us, and now we were the ones on the back foot. Commander, Talek said, pulling me back to the moment. We need to report what we've seen. The human fleet is unlike anything we've encountered. They've weaponized ancient technology, and their tactics, they've clearly studied us. Agreed, I replied, scanning the control room. But we must tread carefully. If we reveal too much, it may prompt a counterattack. The Dominion won't react well to this. Then we'll have to present it in a way that makes it clear we need reinforcements, Vorkut suggested, his voice steady. If we don't act fast, we'll lose the advantage we've built over the years. I nodded, formulating a plan in my mind. We needed to craft our message carefully, showcasing the humans' might without inciting unnecessary panic among our ranks. The Dominion could not see us as weak, or we would face an internal crisis. Prepare a holo briefing, I ordered. We'll relay our findings and the status of our forces. We need to assure them we can still hold our ground, but they must understand the urgency of our situation. Talek began working on the projections, his fingers dancing across the console. I could feel the tension in the air, a palpable mixture of anxiety and determination. We were on the brink of something monumental, and every decision counted. "Commander," Vorkut interjected, "if we're going to broadcast our message, we should consider our security protocols. The humans are crafty. They might have ways of intercepting our transmissions." I nodded, contemplating the options. Set up a secure channel and implement all necessary protocols. We can't afford to have any leaks. The humans can't know what we're planning. As Talek worked on securing our communications, I turned my thoughts to the impending confrontation. We would need a solid plan to counter the human threat, but first we had to gather intelligence and assess our strengths. The ship's intercom crackled to life, drawing our attention. "Commander, we have incoming vessels. They're flying the Dominion colors." "On screen," I commanded, my heart racing. The image flickered to life, revealing a familiar sight: the sleek, angular forms of our remaining ships forming a protective formation around the Vortal. Relief washed over me. We weren't alone. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," one of the officers called out. "Patch it through," I replied, tension coiling in my stomach. The image of Admiral Kale appeared, his expression grave. "Commander, we've been monitoring the situation. I take it you encountered the humans directly." "Yes, Admiral," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "We underestimated them. They've activated a dormant fleet, and their capabilities are far beyond what we anticipated." He nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "We've had our own encounters. Their fleet is more coordinated than we ever imagined. We've lost several wings attempting to engage them directly. Their technology. It seems they've unlocked the secrets of the ancients." "Exactly," I confirmed. "We barely escaped with our lives. If we don't change our tactics, we risk annihilation." Admiral Kale's gaze hardened, his determination palpable. "Then we must adapt. We'll gather what's left of our forces and form a new strategy. We can't allow this to escalate into an all-out war without a plan." "What do you suggest?" I asked, my heart racing with the weight of the impending conflict. "We'll regroup at the designated rally point," he said firmly. "Then we will strike back, but with caution. We can't afford to underestimate the humans again." I felt a spark of hope igniting in my chest. This was our chance to reclaim the initiative. If we could strike while they were still figuring out their new weapons, we might just have a shot. "Admiral, I suggest we employ guerrilla tactics," I proposed, my mind racing with possibilities. "Hit and run strikes on their supply lines. We can draw them away from their main forces and pick them off one by one." "Agreed," Kale replied, nodding thoughtfully. "We'll spread our forces out. The humans won't be able to anticipate our movements if we keep them guessing." As we finalized our plans, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something extraordinary. The humans had awakened a sleeping giant, and we would need every ounce of cunning and strategy to navigate the conflict ahead. "Let's make this count," I said, determination coursing through me. "We're going to show them what we're made of." The crew around me rallied, their spirits lifted by the prospect of fighting back. It was a new beginning, one filled with uncertainty, but also with potential, and we would rise to meet the challenge. As we prepared to depart, the echo of Captain Reed's voice lingered in my mind. He had shown us a glimpse of their strength, and I couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was about to change, and we were at the heart of it. The rally point was set in a desolate region of space, far from prying eyes. The Vortal led our remaining ships into a cluster of asteroids, a perfect backdrop for the strategy meeting. Each jagged rock formed a natural barrier, giving us a chance to regroup without the constant threat of human detection. As I stepped into the makeshift war room aboard the Vortal, the mood was tense but focused. The flickering holographic displays light the faces of my officers, their expressions reflecting a mix of determination and uncertainty. I took my place at the head of the table, the weight of command pressing down on me. "Listen up," I called, drawing their attention. We've faced a severe setback, but this is our opportunity to adapt and strike back. The humans have made their presence known, but we will not cower in fear. We'll take the fight to them on our terms. Talek stood to my right, his eyes scanning the star map projected above the table. We've identified their supply routes, he said, pointing to several highlighted lines that snaked through the vastness of space. If we can disrupt these, we'll force them to spread their forces thin. Good work, Talek, I replied, feeling a surge of confidence. But we can't just strike blindly. We need to know more about their capabilities. Have our scouts returned? Vorkut leaned forward, adjusting his gaze from the star map to me. We lost contact with the last 2 scouts we sent. It's possible the humans have enhanced their sensor technology. They might be monitoring our every move. A murmur of concern rippled through the room. I understood the apprehension. We were operating at a disadvantage, but we had to forge ahead. Then we'll change our approach, I said, my mind racing. We'll send in a smaller ship, one that can blend in with the debris of the asteroid field. Talek, you'll lead the mission. Gather intel on their fleets and, if possible, intercept any communications. Talek's eyes widened. Me? Alone? Not alone. You'll have a crew, but you'll need to be discreet. The goal is to gather information, not engage, I clarified. If we can pinpoint their weaknesses, we can plan our assault more effectively. Understood, he replied, determination settling in his features. I'll make sure we stay undetected. I turned my attention back to the holographic map, tracing the lines of the human supply routes. We'll coordinate our strike with your findings, Talek. We'll aim for their logistics hubs first. Without their supplies, their offensive capabilities will diminish significantly. As the strategy discussion continued, a part of me couldn't shake the nagging feeling that we were venturing into a trap. The humans were intelligent. They wouldn't let us disrupt their supply lines without a fight. But we had to take that risk. Our survival depended on it. Hours passed as we solidified our plans. Finally, the officers left the war room, leaving only Talek and me behind. I felt a momentary wave of uncertainty wash over me. Do you think we're making the right choice? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Talek regarded me for a moment, his expression serious. Commander, we're fighting for our survival. If we don't take the initiative, we'll be wiped out. The humans have shown us their strength, but we have our own. We just need to be smart about it. He was right, of course. Fear and hesitation would only lead to our downfall. We needed to embrace the challenge, harness our strengths, and confront the humans head-on. Let's prepare for departure, I said, my voice firm. We're setting out at first light. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The crew worked tirelessly to prepare the smaller vessel for the mission. As I watched them scurry about, I felt a deep sense of pride. These were my people, warriors willing to fight for their survival. As the first rays of light flickered across the dark void of space, I gathered with the crew on the launch bay. Talek stood at the forefront, flanked by his team. Remember, our goal is intelligence, not engagement. Stay low, stay quiet, and return with whatever you can gather. He met my gaze, and I gave him a slight nod, a silent promise of support. The crew boarded the ship, and within moments they were off, a sleek silhouette vanishing into the shadows of the asteroid field. With Talek's team gone, I felt an unsettling emptiness settle within me. I turned my focus back to the control room, where Vorkut and the rest of the crew were monitoring the area. The waiting was agonizing. Each passing moment felt like an eternity. Any sign of the humans? I asked, attempting to quell my rising anxiety. Vorkut shook his head. Not yet, Commander, but I've adjusted our scanners to detect any changes in their sensor patterns. We'll be able to pick them up if they venture close. Hours stretched into an agonizing wait, each second ticking away like a countdown. Finally, a beep sounded from the console, and Vorkut's head snapped up, a look of surprise washing over his face. Commander, we have a reading, he exclaimed. 2 human vessels are moving through the area, possibly on patrol. My heart raced. Can we identify them? He quickly adjusted the readings. Yes, it seems they're using smaller ships, likely scouts. They must be monitoring for any signs of our movements. Can we get a clearer view? I pressed, my instincts screaming for more information. Working on it, Vorkit replied, fingers flying across the console. As the display flickered to life, the outlines of the human ships came into view. They were sleek, angular, and intimidating, with technology that radiated an unsettling familiarity. A wave of memories washed over me, memories of watching those same ships engage in combat during our last encounter. I had underestimated them then, and I wouldn't make the same mistake again. Commander, they're not alone, Vorkit shouted, his voice slicing through the tension. More vessels are entering the vicinity. Multiple contacts? I asked, my mind racing. Yes, it looks like they're forming a blockade. The realization struck me like a thunderbolt. They had anticipated our movements. They were ready to counter us before we even made a move. Sound the alarm, I ordered, adrenaline surging through me. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to get Talek's team out of there. Vorkit's hands flew across the controls, and alarms blared throughout the ship. The crew sprang into action, each one instinctively knowing their role. We'll try to reach Talek's team and warn them, Vorkit said, urgency filling his voice. Do it now, I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. As the frantic activity surged around me, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Talek was out there, and we were running out of time. Commander, Vorkit exclaimed, eyes wide. We're detecting a surge of energy from one of the human ships. Are they firing? I asked, fear gnawing at my insides. Yes, they're preparing to launch something, he shouted. Before I could process the implications, a brilliant flash erupted on the display, light the room in blinding light. My heart sank as I realized what it meant. Brace for impact, I yelled, my voice barely carrying over the chaos. The ship shook violently, and I was thrown against the console, the world spinning around me. We're taking damage, Vorkit shouted, desperately trying to stabilize our course. Shields at 50%. Return fire, I ordered, gripping the edge of the console to steady myself. As my crew scrambled to respond, I caught a glimpse of the chaos unfolding outside. The humans were organized, their ships moving in perfect coordination, launching another volley towards us. But amid the storm of energy and chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The ship bucked and shuddered beneath my feet as the next barrage from the humans struck home. Consoles sparked and flickered, and the alarms were a deafening crescendo. But I couldn't allow myself to focus on the chaos. Not now. Status report, I barked, trying to cut through the panic that threatened to seep into the crew. Vorkit and the others were scrambling at their stations, trying to stabilize the ship as we took hit after hit. Shields are down to 30%, Vorkit shouted, fingers flying over the controls. We've lost secondary weapons. We won't last much longer if they keep this up. The human ships had us pinned down in the asteroid field, their formation flawless. I could see them now on the display, small, agile ships, darting in and out of cover, their fire precise and relentless. Their strategy was clear: isolate, overwhelm, and destroy. But I wouldn't let them, not like this. We need to get out of here, I growled, frustration gnawing at my control. Find us a way through their blockade. I'm trying, Vorkit snapped, his frustration mirroring mine. They've got every exit covered. If we make a move, they'll tear us apart. Then, from across the room, one of the communications officers looked up, eyes wide with alarm. Commander, we've lost contact with Talek's team. They've gone dark. The words hit me like a physical blow. Talek, out there in that fragile scout ship, was now in the heart of the storm. The mission I had sent him on, the mission to gather intel and give us a fighting chance, had turned into a death trap. No, I muttered under my breath, pacing in frustration. Talek's ship was smaller and stealthier than ours, but if they had been caught in the human net, I couldn't think about it. I had to believe they were still alive. Commander, Vorkut's voice snapped me back to the present. We're not going to survive another direct hit. We need to act now. I looked at the tactical display. There was no easy escape. Every path was a trap. But then, a thought struck me, one that was desperate, reckless, and exactly what we needed. What? Commander, if we do that? I know what I'm saying, I snapped, cutting him off. The humans won't expect us to charge head-on. They think we're going to run, but we'll go right through them. There was a moment of stunned silence in the control room, and I could feel the weight of every eye on me. They were waiting to see if I had lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I was willing to take the gamble. Trust me, I said, softening my voice. We've been outmatched at every turn because we've been playing their game. But if we take the fight directly to them, they won't be prepared. Humans think tactically, but they can be caught off guard when someone defies their logic. Vorkut hesitated only a second longer before nodding. All power to forward thrusters, diverting now. The engines roared to life beneath us, and the ship surged forward, its battered frame groaning under the strain. I felt the acceleration in my bones as we raced headlong toward the human blockade. Commander, we're going straight at them, one of the officers shouted, disbelief and fear in his voice. That's the idea, I shouted back. Open fire on anything that gets in our way. Keep them guessing. Our weapons blazed to life, the ship shaking as we fired everything we had. The humans must have been caught off guard because their formation faltered. The nearest ships hesitated, pulling back slightly, as if they hadn't expected us to charge right into the jaws of death. A grim smile tugged at my lips. Good. Let them hesitate. Let them falter. This was our chance. Brace for impact, Vorkut shouted as we closed the distance. The first human ship came into range, and we unleashed a devastating volley at point-blank range. The ship buckled under the assault, its shields flaring and collapsing before it exploded in a brilliant burst of light. Target down, one of the officers shouted triumphantly. But we had no time to celebrate. The rest of the human fleet was reacting now, and they opened fire with a fury that shook our ship to its core. Shields are critical, Vorkut yelled, his voice strained. Keep pushing, I ordered, my hands gripping the edge of the console so hard my claws dug into the metal. We break through here, or we die. The asteroid field was a blur around us as we weaved and dodged through the deadly rain of fire. Every second felt like an eternity, every maneuver a desperate gamble to stay alive. But somehow, impossibly, we were doing it. The human ships were struggling to adapt to our sudden, reckless assault. Commander, I'm detecting an opening, Vorkut called out, hope creeping into his voice. If we can make it past the next two ships, we'll break free of the blockade. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. The moment of truth. Give it everything we've got, I shouted. Fire on those ships, full power. Our weapons roared again, and the space around us lit up with the fury of battle. The first human ship buckled under the assault, its shields collapsing as we tore through its hull. The second ship fired back, but we were already too close, and with a final burst of speed, we shot past it, leaving the blockade behind. We're clear, Vorkut shouted, his voice filled with disbelief and relief. We did it. The crew erupted in cheers, the tension breaking as we soared into the open space beyond the asteroid field. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was only a temporary victory. We were still on the run, still outnumbered and outgunned, and Talek's fate remained uncertain. Commander, Vorkut said, his voice quieting the celebration. We're picking up a faint signal. It's Talek's ship. My heart leaped in my chest. Patch it through. A burst of static filled the room before Talek's voice broke through, weak but unmistakable. Commander, we've been hit. The humans, they were waiting for us. Talek, can you make it back? I asked, my voice tight with concern. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was grim. Negative, Commander. We're too damaged. But We got what you need. The intel. I'm transmitting it now. A few moments later, Vorkut nodded. We're receiving the data. I closed my eyes, relief and sorrow mingling in equal measure. Talek had done his duty, but it had cost him everything. Talek, I said quietly, you're a true warrior. Your sacrifice won't be in vain. Just make them pay, he whispered before the transmission cut out. I stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of the loss heavy on my shoulders. Then I turned to Vorkut. Analyze the data. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. Yes, Commander, he replied, already working on the transmission. As I looked out at the stars beyond the viewport, I felt a new determination settle over me. The humans had struck us hard, but we had survived. And now, with the information Talek had given us, we would strike back. The counterattack was coming, and this time, the humans wouldn't see it coming. The dim glow of the tactical displays lighted the command center, casting sharp shadows across the faces of my crew. As Vorkut sifted through the data Talek had transmitted, I felt a surge of anticipation coursing through me. This was our chance to turn the tide. Commander, Vorkut said, his fingers flying across the console. The data confirms what we feared. The humans have established a base on the third moon of the gas giant in this system. It appears they are using it to launch their ships and coordinate their attacks. I nodded, the implications of that information settling over me like a thick fog. They were bolder than we had anticipated, using their newfound resources to solidify their presence in our space. But we could exploit that. We could strike while they were still building their defenses. Can we determine their troop strength? I asked, pacing the room, my mind racing with possibilities. Not yet, Vorkut replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. But it seems their main fleet is divided, with a significant portion still engaged in skirmishes elsewhere. We might be able to catch them off guard. A plan began to take shape, one that hinged on our swift execution and cunning strategy. We can't strike head-on, we'll need to be subtle. Divide their attention further. Use the asteroids as cover and launch a coordinated attack. The crew murmured in agreement, the tension in the room shifting from despair to determination. We had lost Talek, but his sacrifice had ignited a fire within us. We would avenge him. Vorkut, I need you to send a small squadron to flank their base. Use the asteroid field as cover and create a diversion. Make it look like we're retreating. He nodded, already setting to work on the specifics. What about you, Commander? I'll lead the main attack. We'll hit their base from the front while their attention is diverted. If we time this right, we can cripple their operations and force them to reconsider their strategy. As the crew rallied around the plan, I could feel the adrenaline surging through my veins. This was our moment to reclaim our pride and show these humans that we were not the pushovers they believed us to be. Prepare the ship for immediate departure, I ordered, my voice steady. And let's move swiftly. We don't have time to waste. The engines roared to life beneath us, and as we emerged from our temporary hideout in the asteroid field, the view of the human base grew closer. The third moon loomed large ahead, its surface dotted with makeshift installations and the flickering lights of human ships preparing for another skirmish. As we approached, I could see the flurry of activity on the moon's surface. The humans were not just building. They were preparing for war, but they were unprepared for what we had in store for them. Vorkut, how's the diversion? I asked, my pulse quickening. Almost ready, he replied. We'll create a false signal, making it look like we're moving toward the outer system. It should draw their forces away from the base. Good, I said, gripping the controls tightly as we entered weapons range. Let's make sure they feel every ounce of our wrath. With a deep breath, I activated the comms. All hands, prepare for battle. Today, we strike for our fallen brother and for our honor. Let the humans know they underestimated us. The crew responded with a roar of agreement, the tension in the air electric as we surged forward. The first shots rang out, a barrage of energy beams lighting up the darkness as we opened fire on the human installations. The base erupted in chaos, alarms blaring as our assault took them by surprise. Ships scrambled to launch, but they were slow, disorganized. We had the advantage, and I intended to exploit it. "Target their launch bays," I ordered, and our weapons fired relentlessly. Each strike struck true, and I could see the human ships exploding in brilliant fireballs as our onslaught continued. "Commander, we're getting reports from the diversionary squadron," Vorkut shouted, excitement lacing his voice. "They've successfully drawn away a significant portion of the fleet." "Good. Let's keep pushing. We'll take this base before they can regroup." The battle raged around us, chaos and destruction swirling like a tempest. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me as I directed our ship, maneuvering through the debris of shattered human vessels. It was beautiful and terrifying. But as we pressed deeper, a new wave of ships emerged from the base, a formidable formation ready to engage us. My heart sank. They had regrouped faster than I had anticipated. "Vorkut, what's our status?" I shouted over the din of alarms and weapons fire. "They're launching heavy fighters," he yelled. "We're outnumbered." I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. "Then we take the fight to them. Rally all remaining forces. We need to concentrate our fire and make every shot count." The crew worked in perfect synchronization, each movement a testament to their training and determination. We unleashed our weapons with renewed vigor, targeting their lead ships and working to disable their formations. The tide of battle turned once more as we pressed our advantage. One by one, their ships fell, the vibrant explosions lighting up the darkness of space. We were relentless, fueled by our anger and loss, and we would not stop until we had avenged Talek. "Commander," Vorkut shouted, excitement edging into his voice. "We're taking heavy damage, but we've crippled their command structure. They're in disarray." "Push forward. We can't let them regroup," I shouted, my heart racing as I felt the thrill of victory surging within me. With every passing moment, the human forces began to falter. Our relentless assault was overwhelming them, and I could see the hesitation in their maneuvers. They had expected us to flee, to cower in fear, but we had shown them our strength. "Commander, we've pushed them back to the launch bays," Vorkut reported, triumph coloring his tone. "They're scrambling to regroup, but they're taking heavy losses." "Good. Let's finish this. Target their command center and fire at will." The ship shook as we unleashed our fury on their command structure. Energy beams lanced through the chaos, striking the heart of their operations. I watched as the command center erupted in flames, the explosions sending shockwaves through the surrounding ships. "Direct hits on their command center. They're breaking," Vorkut shouted, a wide grin spreading across his face. I felt a surge of triumph wash over me. We had done it. We had turned the tide of this battle and shown the humans that we would not be easily defeated. As the last remnants of their fleet began to scatter, I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. We had avenged Talek, we had proven our strength, and now the humans knew that we would not back down. But the victory was bittersweet. We had suffered losses, and the memory of Talek would linger in my heart. We had fought valiantly, but the cost had been high. "Prepare to pull back," I ordered, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've done enough damage for today. Let's regroup and assess our next steps." As we began to pull away, I looked out at the remnants of the battle. The stars shone brightly in the darkness, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. We were battered, bruised, but we were still here. I stood on the bridge of the Zarketh, staring out into the void. The remnants of the human fleet had retreated, but the price of our fleeting victory weighed heavily on me. Talek was gone, and though we had repelled the humans this time, I knew we had merely delayed the inevitable. "Commander, our intelligence reports indicate that they're regrouping," Vorkut said, his voice grave. He was not just my second in command, he was my friend. We had fought side by side, but even he seemed to sense the growing darkness. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "They will strike again. We must prepare." But the truth was, we had taken heavy losses in that last battle. Our ships were damaged, our morale shaken. The humans had shown resilience that I could no longer ignore, and I feared we were on the verge of a crushing defeat. The Zarkith shuddered suddenly, an alert blaring across the console. "We have incoming ships. They're flanking us," Vorkut shouted, rushing to his station. "Battle stations," I yelled, feeling the adrenaline surge. But even as we prepared for another fight, doubt crept into my mind. What if this time we didn't win? As we entered combat, I noticed something peculiar. The humans were not launching a full assault. They were probing our defenses, testing our reactions. It was a tactic designed to gather intelligence, and I knew we had to stop them. "Redirect power to the forward shields," I ordered. "We can't let them breach our defenses." But as I watched the screen, I noticed a shift in the human formation. They were positioning themselves for a decisive strike, and my heart sank. "Commander, they're attempting to draw us into an ambush," Vorkut shouted, but it was too late. The trap was set. I felt a pang of regret as the human ships surged forward, energy beams lighting up the void. I ordered evasive maneuvers, but their tactics were swift and calculated. We were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The battle devolved into chaos. I lost sight of our objectives as I fought desperately to hold the line. But the truth was clear. We were losing ground. The humans had adapted to our strategies, and their resolve was unwavering. As our shields flickered under the relentless assault, I knew I had to make a choice. We couldn't continue like this. We needed a new plan, one that would ensure our survival. "Vorkut, prepare to establish a signal for a truce," I commanded, feeling a mix of dread and hope. "A truce, Commander?" he questioned, shock evident in his voice. "We must seek an alliance. If we do not, we risk annihilation. They are stronger than we anticipated, and our pride will not save us." Reluctantly, he nodded. The realization weighed heavily on both of us. If we were to survive, we would need to set aside our differences and extend an olive branch to our enemies. The comms crackled to life, my heart pounding in my chest. "This is Commander Draken of the Zarkith. We seek a truce. We are willing to negotiate an alliance." Silence hung in the air, heavy and pregnant with uncertainty. I could feel the weight of our history pressing down on us, our long-standing animosity swirling like a storm. Would they accept? Vorkut monitored the channels, his expression a mix of hope and fear. "They're responding, Commander," he announced, eyes wide. The human voice came through, steady and commanding. "This is Admiral Baker of the United Terran Fleet. We acknowledge your request. Stand by for transmission." Moments felt like lifetimes as we awaited their response. I could only imagine what the humans were discussing. Did they sense our desperation? Did they think us weak? "Commander, they're sending a shuttle," Vorkut reported, relief flooding his tone. "They're willing to meet. Prepare the landing bay." "We need to show them we come in peace," I replied, feeling a mix of anticipation and dread. As the shuttle landed, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the meeting. A part of me felt apprehensive, knowing the gravity of this moment. We were stepping into unknown territory. The ramp lowered, revealing a human in a uniform adorned with insignia I recognized from battle reports. He had an air of authority, and despite my instincts urging me to distrust him, I felt a flicker of hope. "Commander Draken," he greeted, extending a hand. "Admiral Baker, thank you for agreeing to meet." I hesitated before shaking his hand, the gesture feeling foreign and fraught with tension. "We have suffered too much on both sides. I believe we can achieve more together than apart." "Agreed," Baker replied, his expression grave. "But trust won't come easily. We'll need to address our past confrontations and the terms of any potential alliance." As we delved into discussions, I realized how vital it was to bridge the chasm between our races. We spoke of trade, technology, and mutual defense against any common enemies. The more we exchanged, the more I could see the possibility of a future where our two species could coexist. Yet, I was haunted by our history. How could I expect my people to accept this alliance after all we had fought for? "Commander, Baker said, breaking my reverie. We can't force acceptance overnight. This will take time, and we'll need to show your people the benefits of working together. I nodded, understanding the complexities of diplomacy. But as the discussions progressed, the prospect of a united front against greater threats began to seem possible. I just hoped that our people would see it the same way. The Zarkith returned to our home world with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. Vorkut and I had prepared our crew for the impending discussions about the alliance. It was time to present our case to the council. As we entered the grand chamber, I felt the weight of their gazes upon me. The council members were seasoned veterans, their eyes filled with skepticism and distrust. "Commander Draken, you return without the glory of victory," one elder stated, his tone sharp. "You wish to propose an alliance with the humans." "Victory comes in many forms," I replied, steadying my voice. "I propose we unite with the humans to ensure our survival against greater threats. We cannot afford to be blinded by pride." Gasps echoed through the chamber, and the tension thickened. I could see my words had struck a nerve, and I pressed on. "They are formidable, but they are not our enemy. If we stand together, we can protect our future." Vorkut stepped forward, his voice firm. "The humans have shown resilience and ingenuity. If we unite, we can learn from each other and enhance our strengths. This alliance could usher in a new era for both our species." But the council was divided. Some spoke in favor of peace, while others clung to old grudges. I could see their fears mirrored in their expressions. They were haunted by memories of battles lost and friends fallen. "Think of our history," an elder said, rising from his seat. "Can we truly trust them? They will seek to dominate us, to exploit our resources." "Or," I countered, "they could become our greatest allies. We must choose to look forward, not backward. The universe is vast and filled with unknown dangers. Together, we can confront those threats." As the debate raged on, I felt the tension in the room escalate. I knew that time was running out. The humans were waiting for our response, and if we hesitated too long, we risked losing this chance at peace. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the council reached a consensus. "We shall consider your proposal, Commander. But know this, if we choose to ally with the humans, we must tread carefully. Their intentions may not be as noble as they seem." I felt a rush of relief, but the weight of responsibility settled over me. We had taken the first step toward peace, but the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The days turned into weeks as we initiated our tentative alliance with the humans. The initial discussions had yielded results, but the real work lay ahead. We needed to foster trust, and that would be no easy feat. I was tasked with overseeing the integration of our two species, a responsibility that both thrilled and terrified me. Vorkut remained by my side, a steady presence amid the chaos. "Commander, the human delegation has arrived for joint training exercises," he informed me one morning, his expression serious. "Good. We need to show our forces the value of cooperation," I replied, bracing myself for what lay ahead. As we prepared for the exercises, I couldn't shake the apprehension gnawing at me. How would our soldiers react to the humans? Would they see them as allies or foes? The training grounds were bustling with activity as human soldiers mingled with our warriors. I watched as they exchanged techniques, each group struggling to adapt to the other's fighting style. At first, the atmosphere was tense. Old animosities simmered beneath the surface, and I could feel the distrust lurking in the air. But as the drills progressed, laughter began to break through the tension. Our soldiers, despite their ingrained wariness, started to appreciate the humans' unconventional tactics. I watched as a human sergeant demonstrated a hand-to-hand maneuver, explaining it with fervor. To my surprise, one of my warriors tried it, stumbling awkwardly before breaking into a laugh. "Not bad, but you might want to try using your legs next time," the sergeant joked, and the camaraderie blossomed before my eyes. In that moment, I realized that the seeds of trust were beginning to take root. I approached the training area, eager to witness the unity growing between our races. Show them our techniques, I encouraged my warriors. As they showcased their combat skills, I felt a surge of pride. The humans watched with curiosity, taking notes and asking questions. Slowly but surely, walls were coming down, and our soldiers began to bond over their shared love of combat and strategy. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. I noticed factions emerging, those who remained skeptical of the alliance. Whispers circulated about potential betrayals, and a small group of my own warriors began to plot against the humans, emboldened by lingering animosity. One evening, as I prepared for bed, Vorkut stormed into my quarters. "Commander, there are rumors of a coup against the humans. Some of our warriors are planning to sabotage the exercises." My heart raced as I absorbed the news. "Who?" I demanded, urgency coursing through me. "Rathok, one of our fiercest fighters. He's convinced the humans are plotting against us," Vorkut said, frustration evident in his tone. "He believes they'll betray us at the first opportunity." "We can't let them undermine our efforts," I replied, my mind racing. "We need to confront Rathok before he gathers support." Together, we set off to find him. As we approached a dimly lit area where Rathok and his followers gathered, I felt a mix of anger and disappointment. We had come so far, yet some still clung to hatred. "Rathok," I called out, my voice cutting through the murmur of discontent. "You need to listen to reason. The humans are our allies now." Rathok turned, his eyes blazing with indignation. "Allies? You've lost your mind, Draken. They are our enemies in disguise, waiting to strike." "Look around you," I said, gesturing to the humans training with our soldiers. "Can't you see the change? They are fighting alongside us, not against us. You're letting your fear blind you." "But what if they betray us? What if we become their pawns?" he shouted, his voice filled with a desperation I had seen too many times in the throes of battle. "Then we will deal with that when it comes," I replied, my heart heavy with the burden of leadership. "But right now, we must unite. If you do not believe in this alliance, you are welcome to leave. But know that you will be turning your back on your own people." A tense silence followed. The tension was palpable as my words hung in the air. My soldiers exchanged nervous glances, uncertainty clouding their faces. Rathok looked around, his expression wavering. "You may think you're right, but I cannot trust them. I cannot stand by while we risk everything." "Then you have made your choice," I said, my heart sinking. "But I will not allow you to sabotage this alliance." With that, I turned my back on him, feeling a mixture of sadness and resolve. If he wished to sow dissent, he would have to do it without my support. I could only hope my warriors would choose the path of unity. Weeks passed, and the joint exercises continued, though the shadow of Rathok's descent loomed over us. I had made it my mission to strengthen the bond between our people, but the distrust still lingered like a dark cloud. One fateful day, we received disturbing news. A hostile force had emerged near our sector, a band of space raiders notorious for attacking both humans and my kind. They were drawn to the chaos and would not hesitate to exploit any weakness. "We must act quickly," I urged the council, my heart racing. "This is our chance to prove our alliance. We can show the galaxy that we stand united." Admiral Baker, present via hologram, nodded in agreement. "We'll coordinate our forces. Together, we can confront this threat." As we prepared for battle, I felt a sense of urgency. We had trained hard, but now we would face our first real test as allies. The council agreed to a combined strike force, and I was appointed to lead the operation alongside Admiral Baker. "Draken, I know this is daunting, but together we can turn the tide," Baker said, his voice steady and confident. "We will show them the strength of our alliance," I replied, my determination unwavering. As we approached the raiders' base, tension filled the air. I stood on the bridge of the Zarkith, staring at the holographic display of our combined fleet. Humans and my people were positioned side by side, ready to engage. "Commander, incoming communication from the raiders," Vorkut said, his brow furrowed. "They demand our surrender." "Let them hear our answer," I said, my voice steady. This time, we will not falter. The battle began, and chaos erupted around us. Energy beams lit up the dark void of space as we engaged the raiders, but I could feel the tension between our forces. Would we work together, or would the fear of betrayal tear us apart? Admiral Baker and I coordinated our maneuvers, weaving our ships in and out of danger. We pressed forward, determined to push the raiders back. But just as we began to gain ground, a surge of unexpected fire came from behind us. "Commander, the Zarkith is under attack," Vorkit shouted, his voice laced with panic. My heart sank as I realized what was happening. Rathok and his loyalists had launched an assault against the humans from within our ranks. They had chosen to fight for their perceived honor rather than for unity. "Vorkit, redirect shields to the aft," I commanded, frustration boiling within me. We must protect our allies. As the internal conflict raged on, I struggled to maintain control. Our forces were splintered, caught between fighting the raiders and dealing with the traitors among us. I spotted Rathok's ship among the chaos, his forces firing indiscriminately. "Rathok, stop this madness," I shouted over the comms, desperation creeping into my voice. "You're putting all our lives at risk." But he continued his assault, convinced that he was acting for our people. I felt the weight of failure pressing down on me, the unity we had fought for crumbling under the weight of fear. Just then, I spotted an opening. A gap in the raiders' formation had opened up, and I seized the opportunity. "Admiral, we need to push forward," I urged. "Understood, Commander. Let's show them what we're made of." Baker's voice resonated with resolve. As we charged into the fray, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The humans and my warriors fought side by side, our ships moving in a beautiful display of coordinated maneuvers. We pressed the raiders back, our focus unwavering. But Rathok's betrayal had not gone unnoticed. The raiders, sensing weakness, began to exploit the chaos. Just as it seemed we would turn the tide, they launched a coordinated strike on our combined forces. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," I shouted, but it was too late. Energy blast rained down, and explosions erupted around us. "Commander, we're taking heavy damage," Vorkit shouted, panic in his eyes. In that moment of chaos, I made a decision. I needed to confront Rathok myself. "Cover me," I ordered, determination surging through me. I maneuvered my ship toward Rathok's position, dodging enemy fire as I cut through the fray. I could see him, pride etched into his features even amidst the chaos. "Rathok," I shouted over the comms, my voice steady. "Stop this. You're endangering our people." He met my gaze, anger flashing in his eyes. "You've betrayed us. This alliance is a lie." "No, it is our only hope," I countered, desperation spilling into my words. "We need to fight together. If you do not stop this now, we will all fall." As I closed in, I could see uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Just then, a raider ship broke through, targeting Rathok's vessel. I felt a surge of panic. "Rathok, move!" I shouted, but it was too late. The raider's weapon fired, and my heart sank as I watched the explosion consume his ship. "No!" I screamed, anguish flooding my voice. But in that moment of despair, I realized what he had fought for. Rathok's actions, misguided though they were, had come from a place of loyalty to our people. As his ship disintegrated, I felt the weight of his loss, but it was too late to save him. With renewed determination, I turned back to the battle. "We will honor his memory," I vowed to myself. Fueled by anger and grief, we pressed forward, rallying our forces against the remaining raiders. Together, humans and my warriors fought as one, pushing back the enemy and claiming victory in the face of overwhelming odds. As the dust settled and silence fell over the battlefield, I realized that we had emerged stronger. The sacrifice of my former comrade would not be in vain. It had united us in a way nothing else could. In the aftermath, Admiral Baker and I stood on the bridge of the Zarkith, surveying the damage. "We've done it," he said, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "But it came at a cost." "Yes," I replied, feeling the weight of our losses. "But we have forged a bond that can withstand the darkness. We must honor those we lost by ensuring their sacrifices were not in vain. As we looked out into the vastness of space, I felt a surge of hope. Together, we had overcome the greatest threat, and now we could face whatever challenges awaited us. The alliance had been tested, and though scars remained, we would move forward together. The galaxy was vast, and we would navigate it as one. The aftermath of the battle was a cacophony of devastation and despair. As I stood on the bridge of the Zarkith, surveying the wreckage of our combined forces, I couldn't shake the weight of the choices that had led us here. We had fought valiantly, but not without cost. The sacrifice of Rathok lingered in my thoughts, a reminder of the treachery that had almost doomed our alliance. "Commander, we have a situation," Vorkit said, breaking through my thoughts. His face was taut with concern, his brow furrowed. "Scouts have reported that remnants of the Raider fleet are regrouping. They're planning to strike again, and our forces are still recovering." The weight of our losses pressed heavily on my shoulders. "We need to regroup and prepare our defenses. If they think we're vulnerable, they will come for us." But as we strategized, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of urgency. We had become the target of every hostile faction in the galaxy, and as much as I wanted to fight for our newfound alliance with the humans, I knew we needed a different plan. The scars of war ran deep, and it was time for my people to heal. "Vorkit, send a message to the remaining ships. We're initiating an evacuation," I decided, determination flaring within me. It's time we left this place behind. As the orders were dispatched, I couldn't help but glance at the stars outside the viewport. I had once dreamed of exploring the galaxy, yet now the vastness felt suffocating. Would we ever find peace again? The ships responded swiftly, gathering near the Zarkith. We set a course for the nearest jump point, but in the back of my mind, I worried that we would never escape the consequences of our actions. As we prepared to jump, Vorkit's voice rang out. "Commander, there are still some of our ships left behind in the debris field. We can't just leave them." "We'll have to cut our losses," I replied, a bitter taste in my mouth. "We can't risk the lives of the many for the few." The jump point shimmered ahead, a swirling vortex of light and energy. The ship shuddered as we entered, the familiar sensation of warping through space washing over me. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this would be our escape from the chaos we had wrought. Yet as we emerged from the jump, my heart sank. We were not alone. The harsh glow of unfamiliar ships surrounded us, and I immediately recognized their insignia. They belonged to a faction we had long feared, the Varkith, a race known for their ruthlessness and cunning. Their reputation preceded them. They were hunters who reveled in bloodshed. "Commander, they're hailing us," Vorkit shouted. I steeled myself for what was to come. "Put it on screen." The image of a Varkith captain appeared, his grin wide and predatory. "Draken of the Zarkith, we've been expecting you. Your departure from Earth has been noted, and we intend to have a word with you about it." "Speak quickly, Varkith," I replied, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the dread pooling in my stomach. "We have no business with you." "Oh, but you do. You're a valuable prize, after all. Your kind has something we want." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with malice. "And we don't take no for an answer." A shiver of fear coursed through me. I glanced at Vorkit, who looked equally alarmed. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We cannot let them capture us," I ordered. The Varkith captain laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the silence of the ship. "You think you can escape? You have no idea how much we enjoy the hunt." The Varkith ships closed in, their sleek forms gliding with lethal grace. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the panic that threatened to consume me. "Vorkit, divert power to the engines and shields. We'll need every ounce of strength to outrun them." "Yes, Commander," he replied, hands flying over the controls. The Zarkith shuddered as power surged through the systems, but the Varkith were relentless. "We cannot let them capture our ship," I warned, fear creeping into my thoughts. They would extract information about our alliance with the humans. They would use our secrets against us. "Commander, they're firing," Vorkit shouted, and the ship jolted violently as the first energy blast struck our shields. "Return fire," I commanded, adrenaline surging. The weapons on the Zarkith hummed to life, and I aimed at the nearest Varkith ship, releasing a volley of energy blasts. The shots connected, but the enemy vessels were quick, darting away from the brunt of our fire. Come on," I urged, frustration rising within me. My hands tightened around the control panel as we engaged in a deadly dance among the stars. Just as it seemed we would break free, another Varkith ship emerged from the shadows, cutting off our escape route. The captain's voice crackled over the comms again. "You cannot run from your past, Draken. Surrender, and perhaps I will grant you mercy." "Mercy is not something your kind understands," I shouted back defiantly. "Then it's a shame you won't see what we have in store for you," he taunted. I felt a surge of anger wash over me, but beneath it lay the creeping despair of our situation. The Varkith had us cornered, and the hope I had clung to began to crumble. "Vorkit, can we engage the jump drive?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "Not while they're firing on us," he replied, gritting his teeth as he worked the controls. Suddenly, a thought struck me. We need to lure them away. If we can create a diversion, we might just have a chance to escape. "How do you plan to do that?" Vorkit asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "By using our own ship against them," I said, my mind racing. "We'll make them think we're running, but instead, we'll draw them into an ambush." The plan was reckless, but I had little choice. I motioned for Vorkit to initiate the maneuver, and we accelerated towards the nearest Varkith ship, feigning a retreat. "Prepare to engage at my signal," I commanded, my heart pounding in my chest. The Varkith took the bait, pursuing us with fervor. Their eagerness was their downfall, and I could almost feel their anticipation as they closed in. "Now," I yelled, slamming my fist down on the control panel. The Zarkith pivoted sharply, and I unleashed everything we had. Energy blasts erupted from our weapons, striking the nearest Varkith ship with devastating force. For a moment, chaos reigned. Varkith ships were caught off guard, colliding with each other in a frenzy of panic. We used their own momentum against them, weaving through the carnage as our return fire found its mark. "Commander, we've breached their lines," Vorkit exclaimed, astonished. "Now, let's get out of here," I shouted, urging the ship forward. With the Varkith thrown into disarray, we broke free into the vastness of space. As we hurtled through space, I felt a mix of relief and disbelief wash over me. We had escaped the immediate threat, but the shadows of our past still lingered. "Commander, we need to chart a new course," Vorkit said, his expression serious. "If the Varkith regroup, they'll come after us again." I nodded, knowing he was right. "We cannot go back to Earth. Not now, not ever. Our presence there would only bring more conflict and suffering." He paused, understanding the weight of my words. "So where do we go? The galaxy is vast, and our enemies are numerous." "We need to find a place where we can start anew," I said, my mind racing. "We'll search for an uninhabited world, somewhere we can establish a base and regroup. Perhaps even forge a new identity away from our past." Vorkit nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I will begin scanning for suitable planets." As he worked, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Would we truly find a place to call home, and what would we become in the process? Hours turned into days as we navigated through the vast expanse of space, avoiding Varkith patrols and other hostile forces. The tension aboard the Zarkith was palpable. Our warriors were weary from battle, and doubts began to creep into their minds. "We must hold on," I told them during one of our briefings. "The galaxy is full of possibilities, but we must remain united in our purpose. We are no longer defined by the battles we've fought. We are here to create a new legacy." Finally, we received a promising report from Vorkit. "Commander, I believe I've found a suitable planet, a remote, uncharted world, rich in resources but devoid of life." "Plot a course," I ordered, hope igniting within me. "Let's see what this new world holds for us." As we entered the atmosphere of the uncharted planet, I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder. Vast forests sprawled beneath us, mountains towered in the distance, and rivers snaked their way through the landscape. It was a paradise waiting to be explored. Once we landed, I stepped out onto the soft, fertile ground. I inhaled deeply, the air fresh and untainted. For the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Commander," Vorkut said, stepping beside me, "this world is perfect. We can build a new home here, away from the ghost of our past." I smiled, looking out at the horizon. "Yes, this is where we will begin again. We will forge a new identity, free from the chains that once bound us. We will be defined by our choices, not our bloodshed." As my people began to explore our new home, I felt the weight of my decisions begin to lift. The past would always linger, but here we had a chance to shape our future. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the land in a warm glow, I knew that our journey was only just beginning. Together, we would build a legacy worth fighting for, one filled with hope and promise, an alliance not just with humans, but with the very spirit of unity itself.